Hi, everyone. Welcome to Naturally Immune for Life. I'm sorry for the long delay. I thank you for joining me today. If you remember my channel, I unfortunately developed shingles and then went on to develop Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. But I just want to assure everyone that after a long rest, long necessary rest, um, and just taking very good care of myself, I am pretty much fully recovered. I was quite surprised. It began on probably a week before Labor Day weekend, but Labor Day weekend, I did go to Express Care because I developed a rash on my neck, which I actually thought was hives. Turned out it wasn't hives. And then I about fell out of my chair when they said shingles. So thanks to my friends, I took a remedy that's out there that's generally considered well tolerated and safe. But because I don't want to, it's very hard for me to use the word virus anymore or even discuss the word virus. I'm just going to read the definition of a virus and then what they recommended led me down another rabbit hole. And in that rabbit hole, I discovered something even better. So I'm just going to begin with the definition of a virus because I do not entertain false propositions on top of false suppositions, but I also do not want to risk any of my recent gains. So, a virus does not depend upon a personal definition of life because without a distinction, there can be no such thing as biology, the study of living organisms. All cellular life has both DNA and RNA. Humans, animals, plants, bacteria, fungi, and archaea. Viruses are the exception, as they contain either DNA or RNA, but not both. They are not considered living organisms because they are essentially just genetic material wrapped in a protein shell and cannot reproduce without hijacking a host cell's machinery. The origin of viral DNA or RNA as an entity being is unknown aside from the host. They will never be living unless they have answered the riddle of you cannot make DNA without RNA and you cannot make RNA without DNA. So that is what distinguishes a virus from other living things. So what this person recommended was lysine. Lysine is an essential amino acid that some people use for viruses such as herpes, which is in the same quote unquote family as shingles. I could not find any evidence, supportive evidence as for lysine for shingles. But what I did find in the process is Immunonutrition is an emerging strategy for type 2 diabetes. Now, what this person recommended led to a combination of supplements, one which was patented for insulin resistance, and I will not name the substance, but basically it's a combination of nutrients. And while I was researching that, I ran across this, and it pretty much determines that malnutrition is a, what's the word? Substantial factor for the cause of diabetes. So diabetes is a chronic disease that affects a growing number of people across the world. It is one of the leading causes of illness and early death, regardless of gender, age, or country of origin. In 2021, an estimated 36 million adults, 536 million adults, were living with diabetes between 20 and 79. And about 96% of those cases were type 2, which occurs most often in older adults. More than half of those cases are linked to high body mass index, showing how closely diabetes is connected to obesity. Unfortunately, the trend is climbing. By 2045, projections suggest that more than 783 million adults worldwide will have diabetes. And the costs between 2007 and 2021, the worldwide economic burden among adults rose by more than 360%, reaching nearly $1 trillion US. If this trend continues, the global cost is expected to exceed $1 trillion by the year 2030. So that was between 2007 and 2021. And then the cost in just 9 years will reach $1 trillion. So a major reason why diabetes has such a heavy impact is its complications, which can be divided into two broad categories: macrovascular and microvascular. Macrovascular complications involve large blood vessels and include serious cardiovascular diseases such as coronary artery disease, stroke, and peripheral artery disease. Microvascular complications affect small blood vessels and include damage to the eyes, kidneys, and nerves. Research shows that about 50% of patients with type 2 diabetes experience macrovascular complications, while 27% suffer from microvascular complications. These complications reduce quality of life and life expectancy. So managing diabetes requires a comprehensive approach. This usually includes physical activity, a carefully balanced diet, medications, education, and ongoing motivation. Because diabetes can also affect mental health, psychological support is sometimes necessary. According to Mark Lalonde's well-known concept of health determinants, modifiable lifestyle factors account for about 70% of human health, with lifestyle choices alone responsible for nearly 50%. This means that how a person eats, moves, and manages stress can make a powerful difference in both prevention and treatment of diabetes. A healthy diet plays an essential role in diabetes management. However, modern food systems often work against proper nutrition. Highly processed foods, widespread use of chemical additives, and intensive farming methods have reduced levels of vitamins and minerals in the foods people eat. Multiple studies show that the nutrient content of plant-based foods, which should form the basis of a healthy diet, has declined significantly over time. As a result, even individuals with normal or high body weight may be malnourished at the micronutrient level, lacking vitamins and bioactive compounds needed for optimal health. The immune system is one of the body's most important defense mechanisms, and its health is closely linked to chronic disease such as diabetes. For the immune system to function properly, it requires both protein and non-nutritive bioactive compounds like vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. When these nutrients are missing, the immune system cannot operate efficiently, leaving the body more vulnerable to disease. The connection between diet, immunity, and chronic illness is the focus of a growing field called immunonutrition. Immunonutrition studies how nutrients can influence immune function and inflammation. Obesity is one of the strongest risk factors for type 2 diabetes. Excess body fat promotes insulin resistance, a condition in which cells no longer respond properly to insulin. This resistance is linked to chronic low-grade inflammation. And then it goes on to tell you how high blood sugar also weakens the immune system. Research shows that people with diabetes have reduced activity of certain white blood cells, including monocytes, T lymphocytes, and neutrophils. This means they may not respond to infections as effectively as healthy individuals. Diabetes has also been associated with changes in toll-like receptor expression, impaired production of reactive oxygen species, reduced phagocytosis, and dysfunctional natural killer cells. Together, these defects show how closely immune dysfunction and diabetes are intertwined. For the immune system to function properly, it requires both protein. I think I accidentally copied this paragraph twice. Okay. Immunonutrition studies how nutrients can influence immune function and inflammation. Research shows that targeted nutrition can improve outcomes in conditions such as gastrointestinal cancers and Crohn's disease. Applying this same principle to diabetes could help reduce inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity, and limit complications. One of the damaging processes in diabetes is oxidative stress. This occurs when levels of harmful molecules, called reactive oxygen species, exceed the body's ability to neutralize them. ROS are produced naturally in mitochondria, but can build up in conditions like chronic hyperglycemia. Excess ROS damage DNA, proteins, and lipids, leading to cellular dysfunction. In diabetes, oxidative stress reduces glucose uptake in muscle and fat cells, impairs insulin secretion from pancreatic beta cells, and can even cause beta cell death. Over time, this worsens insulin deficiency deficiency and pushes blood sugar levels higher. Diabetes is often described as a state of chronic low-grade inflammation. High blood sugar stimulates the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines and chemokines, which further disrupt insulin signaling. Adipose tissue, especially in obese, plays a central role. Fat tissue contains immune cells called macrophages, which release inflammatory molecules and even small particles called exosomes. These exosomes can enter the bloodstream and disrupt insulin signaling in other tissues, such as muscle, liver, and fat itself. One study found that these exosomes contain high levels of microRNA 155, a molecule that suppresses genes important for fat metabolism, contributing to further insulin resistance. Even when body weight is normal or high, deficiencies in protein, vitamins, and minerals are common. Laboratory testing can reveal these deficiencies, though routine clinical evaluation often relies on indirect markers. Essential tests for diabetic patients include complete blood counts, protein levels, vitamin and mineral concentrations, such as B12, D3, calcium, and iron, and lipid profiles. Additional testing, such as transferrin saturation, may be needed to diagnose conditions like iron deficiency. Clinical observations support the prevalence of these deficiencies. For example, research in patients with immune disorders has shown high rates of low hemoglobin, low albumin, vitamin D deficiency, folic acid deficiency, and reduced ferritin levels. Even among patients who regularly receive medical care and supplementation. Since diabetes itself acts as a type of secondary immune deficiency, identifying and correcting nutritional deficiencies is especially important. Supplementation with vitamins, minerals, and compounds like omega-3 fatty acids has been shown to improve both laboratory markers and patient well-being. In conclusion, diabetes is more than a disease of blood sugar. It is a complex condition involving inflammation, oxidative stress, immune dysfunction, and nutritional deficiencies. The prevalence and economic impact are rising at alarming rates, and the complications it causes significantly reduce quality of life. Lifestyle changes, especially dietary improvements, remain a cornerstone of prevention and treatment. However, modern diets often fail to provide the essential nutrients needed to support both metabolism and immunity. Careful evaluation of nutritional status, along with targeted supplementation, should therefore be considered an important part of diabetes management. By addressing diet and immunity together, it may be possible to not only control blood sugar, but also reduce complications and improve long-term health outcomes. And the main source of this is, you might find very beneficial because it goes through many vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. So it's a good source to learn about nutrition. And I have put 3 supplements here: vitamin C, zinc, and lysine. Lysine wasn't covered in this particular main paper, but there is plenty out there to educate on what lysine is and does. Is an amino acid. So the second source is nutritional management of diabetes during the pandemic. And it's not a study, but it gives anecdotal evidence of people who, due to the pandemic, couldn't access their normal treatments, so they resorted to supplements. Vitamin C was one of those supplements. So vitamin C ameliorated cardiac autonomic neuropathy in type 2 diabetic rats. What was interesting about that was they caused severe diabetes in diabetic rats with alloxin and fructose. So here is one about lysine ingestion markedly attenuates the glucose response to ingested glucose without a change in insulin. And lysine sources for metabolism, physiological importance, and use as a supplement. So regarding vitamin C, the dose was 1,000 milligrams, which you may be able or may not be able to tolerate for a very long time. And I would recommend sodium ascorbate. One of the few single supplements I actually do recommend is vitamin C, because it's one of the few that can do what it does independently of anything else. Otherwise, I recommend food-based supplements. Zinc, again, extremely important not to overdo zinc. If you overdo zinc, it becomes toxic. Do not give zinc to pets. Lysine, lysine, it would probably be the recommended dose on the supplement bottle. I do not know if there are any adverse effects. Yes, I do believe there can be adverse effects from taking too much lysine, but I did not read what they were because I already read through dozens of papers regarding all of this, and I did not exceed the dose on my supplement bottle, so I would not overdo any supplement, the same as I would not take any supplement without knowing exactly how it works, why it works, and what it works on. So that is what led to this week's post, and there's much more to come regarding, but instead of going back to my regularly scheduled coverage of the B vitamins, since this is a kind of a groundbreaking statement that it's all hands on deck to tackle diabetes. It's such a major worldwide health problem that a well-rounded preventative approach and understanding called immunonutrition is an emerging strategy for type 2 diabetes. And I would just like to read you one other thing here, but I'm going to have to go to I also put this in the library, so let me just access it quickly and read you the abstract about this emerging field of study. which I would also term breastfeeding as immunonutrition. Because that is what develops your immune system, as well as leading to proper immune development. Immunomodulation through nutrition should be a key trend in type 2 diabetes treatment. An organism's ability to function properly depends not solely on its diet, but also on the intake of nutrients and non-nutritive bioactive compounds that exert immunomodulatory effects. This principle applies both to healthy individuals and in particular to those with concomitant chronic conditions such as type 2 diabetes. However, the current food industry and the widespread use of highly processed foods often lead to nutritional deficiencies. Numerous studies have confirmed the occurrence of immune system dysfunction in patients with type 2 diabetes. This article elucidates the impact of specific nutrients on the immune system function, which maintain homeostasis of the organism, with a particular emphasis on type 2 diabetes. The role of macronutrients, micronutrients, vitamins, and selective substances such as omega-3 fatty acids, coenzyme Q10, and alpha lipoic acid was taken into consideration, which outlined the minimum range of tests that ought to be performed on patients in order to either directly or indirectly determine the severity of malnutrition in this group of patients. And then something else that you just might find interesting regarding lysine. Lysine is over 60 years ago, research discovered that lysine is the first limiting amino acid in cereals. Grains like wheat and rice do not contain enough lysine, probably because they're processed, to fully support growth. Studies in children using nitrogen balance techniques showed that adding lysine to a basic wheat diet greatly improved nitrogen retention, a sign of better protein use. Because of this, lysine has long been added to foods and supplements, especially in low-income regions where cereal-based diets are common. That would be Africa, where we ship substandard, even more substandard wheat than what we eat here in the US, and what they rely on to prevent starvation. So that's just one interesting thing of why lysine is used as a supplement in cereals. So you might find that interesting. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much to all my friends for all their concern, all their support, all their help. And thank you to them for leading to this very important paper regarding diabetes and malnutrition, as well as further immune system dysfunction, and the correlation between malnutrition and diabetes as a substantial factor in the cause of diabetes. So if you want to try this combination, I'm not going to say what it's good for, but it is in relation to diabetes more than to a virus. But just be careful, as always. Okay, everyone, I'll see you next time. And I hope you have a great day and a great week. Bye.